Okay, we're on stream.
All right, cool. Welcome to the stream. In the words of a you Hold on.
My bad. I was just telling YouTube hello.
Oh, okay. In the words of a YouTuber I enjoy very much, tickety tock, time to rock. So welcome.
Okay then.
What I wanted to bring up tonight was just sort of the concept of, well, not just the concept, but you could say the state of mind or the state of one's heart when it comes to motivation. Basically, I got some questions for you. What really motivates you guys, just in general? It can be spiritually or it can be personally. I'll let you think about that for a moment while I sort of give my own example. There's definitely a lot of different things that motivate me. One of the things that I find is a very, very strong motivator is something new, something fresh. So whether that's learning something new or something interesting, whether it's some sort of new topic or new information, a new project to work on. That's why I have so many unfinished models, is that I had the motivation to start when it was new, and when it was a new and fresh model, just straight out of the package, and I got it partly put together. And then after a little while, it's my motivation's kind of failing right now. Let me go and work on something else, and then go and work on something else, and then find myself having to loop back around and to eventually finish it. I've got so many half-finished projects. But just sort of newness and vibrancy, something new and intricate to figure out, that's definitely a huge motivator for me personally. And that can be career or art or God or the Bible or any other sort of spiritual or religious books. I just cling to that stuff and eat it up. Whatever is new and fresh and interesting, I'm all about it.
I think for me, something very challenge or something like very difficulty is really motivated me to move forward. For example, I recently got some problem with immigration, so I was trying to apply for a PhD. And then in order to prepare for all the exams, I put lots of efforts into it. So I have to step out of my comfort zone. I love my job. I want to keep stable of this job, but I cannot keep this stable. I have to step out and to learn something new and to challenge myself and motivated myself to study every day.
Yeah, I think what can motivate me is just like things that I love, and like being able to create, whether it's food, whether it's maybe a lesson or something about the Bible, whether it's music. I think if the like finishing and being able to see the result and like enjoy the result, yeah, enjoying the fruits of my labor, that motivates me. Yeah.
For example, Hosaina.
Yes.
You should make an advertisement for yourself.
Say what now? What'd you say?
Make an advertisement for yourself.
That's a lot. That's too much.
What are some of the downsides of the things that motivate you? I already kind of explained with mine, is that if something begins to lose that newness, lose that freshness, become a little less shiny, or maybe if there's something else new that pops up, then that's usually something that gets my attention, or that I begin to gravitate towards and never go back and finish those things. And that's definitely a focus issue, and that sort of yeah, I mean, that's just a little bit uncommitted, right? So I mean, there's definitely some pitfalls to that initial motivation. but that if I don't hit the ground running on an idea or a project or something that I'm committing myself to, then it's very easy for it to fall by the wayside. But how about you guys?
For me, it's like when high complexity leads to like just not knowing what the course of action is. When I just can't clearly see not necessarily what the end state is, but the very next step. And it's very hard for me to like be able to ask proper help or anything. That will really hurt my motivation. I just feel very stuck that I can't do anything, so I'm less inclined to start looking for those answers to be able to move past it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think for me it's like the motivation doesn't really come from it's kind of like it doesn't come from inside. So it's like based on maybe like circumstance, sort of. If I don't have if I can't really see myself completing it or see what the finished work will look like, or see myself at least enjoying or caring about the outcome, then it's less likely for me to be motivated. If that makes sense.
For me, I'm most motivated by the challenges, but sometimes I get overwhelmed by the challenges and I push too hard for completing the challenges, but I forget the initial point I was starting to complete this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always another side to whatever it is that motivates us, and that is whatever is going to stall us. Speaking of being stalled, we're going to go and look at a guy named Saul over in Acts 9. So if you'd like to turn over to Acts 9 and verse 1, we can go and talk about some things.
What inspired segue?
What inspired the segue?
No. I said what
Sorry,
inspired segue?
wait, you kind of cut in and out on me
He
a little
said-
bit. I keep on hearing inspired.
He said, "What an inspired segue."
Ah, thank you, Josue. I do appreciate that. It just came to me in the moment.
For those of you watching at home, obviously we're experiencing some level of weird connectivity issues, so bear with us.
All right. Over in Acts 9, verse 1. Meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. And we're going to stop right there. So we already know about Saul. He's come up before this. He was present at the stoning of Stephen, one of the other disciples who went to go and represent the early Christians at the time. He was essentially giving his approval as a Pharisee. He was standing by and just sort of, well, the details are a bit gruesome, but he was standing there during that execution of that disciple. And so he was so zealous to the point where he wanted to go and get special permission so that he and others could travel outside of Jerusalem and go to a completely different city, to go and travel to Damascus. And by the way, this isn't a short distance. Damascus it's a decent number of miles away. I think it's probably about, 200 miles or so? If someone wants to Google that and correct me, that's totally cool. But he definitely didn't travel a short way to be able to go and do this. So he had so much zeal that he went to a place. Damascus is not in Israel. I'm pretty sure. Damascus? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Damascus is outside of Israel, or if not, it's right at the very edge. But he traveled quite a distance to be able to get to where he was going. He got the special permission and was going to be traveling a good long way, putting in a lot of extra effort. And I mean, it's not even his job to go and do this. He volunteers. He is willing enough to put himself out there to go after the early Christians, to go and have them arrested. And who knows, potentially there's going to be some more executions involved. What do you guys think it was his motivation to go and do all these things?
He sincerely believed that these Christians were going against everything he stood for and everything God stood for. So he was, in his eyes, defending God's honor in a way.
Yeah.
Did that track?
Huh?
Did he hear that?
Yeah, I heard it. No,
Oh, okay.
I'm just waiting for other potential responses.
Yeah,
I'm very patient.
it makes it makes me I feel like I think that's probably like his main motive, but I also wonder like what could have been behind that motive, if that makes sense. Like, could have been driven by some sort of fear, some sort of insecurity. And I think that's interesting to think about as well. Yeah, I don't know, but that's sort of what I was thinking about.
Yeah, we almost have to go into the realm of speculation just because that doesn't come up at any point. But I mean, it's definitely interesting to think about as far as fear and if that was a potential motivating factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, but what we know is that Saul was super motivated. I mean, he was a zealous dude, and he goes on in later on in Acts. He goes on to continue to talk even more about his zeal at the time. He calls himself a Hebrew of Hebrews. He knows that that his parents followed the law early on to when he was brought into the world, circumcised when he needed to be, was born into a good tribe. He was being a good Jew. I mean, just simple as that. He was following the law. He said of himself that he was following the law to the letter, and that he was far outranking a lot of his peers that he was growing up with, that he was doing super well. And so, I mean, he definitely had a lot of zeal to go and accomplish all of that. He was completely and 100% sold out, totally committed to God, and willing to do whatever it took to be able to follow God, to be able to do what he was convinced would be pleasing to God. And obviously, he would have been pretty convinced that that persecuting the early church was going to be a good thing to do. He was totally sold out on that idea. And then, of course, Jesus comes and flips his understanding of godliness, of righteousness, completely flips it on its head, and it changed the entire trajectory of Saul's life, and ultimately for the better. What do you think was the? I mean, we already mentioned zeal, but I mean, as far as he had all of these plans, all of these intentions for what he was going to do, Saul that is. And despite his entire life being flipped upside down, being introduced to now knowing, whoa, the way that I was conducting myself, the way that the way that I have been living needs to change. I need to stop persecuting these people and in fact become one of them. What do you think it was that carried him through from being so motivated to at one point be persecuting to then turn around and to instead join, to instead become one of the people that he was formerly persecuted?
I mean, it was Jesus. Literally, Jesus appeared before him and made it clear what the truth was, and basically forced Saul into a position of accept the truth or deny it. And Saul made the accept the truth decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, Saul was even, he was essentially, from his point of view, he would have been participating in something of a spiritual warfare, doing what he was doing, participating in what he was participating in. Uh, he was in a fight, and he was willing to fight that for God. But then when he realized that he was on the wrong side, he committed, he embraced things fully. He didn't decide to go into this penitence sour mood and, okay, I'll just never do it again. I'll just do what I can to be a good Christian, or anything like that. He didn't just go in and change his life only for him. He went to go and change his life for God, and for all the Christians that there were and that there would ever be. He went off and did something amazing. When you lose at something, either if it's a failure in your career or in a relationship, or let's say a particularly competitive game, when it's clear that you've lost, or if there's what could be said, what could be called a failure on your part, what do you normally feel motivated to do once you've lost at something?
Try and win again.
Try and win again. Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. For me, it depends. If I've lost, sometimes I'm like, all right, I'm done. Uh, you know, I can definitely have like I guess like a defeated mindset where it's like, well, I lost, so
Yeah.
there we go. There it is.
For me, it's to keep hope, keep trusting, and keep trying.
Mm. Yeah. No, that's definitely a good perspective to have. For me, one of the things that I've lost at most frequently has been games of Magic the Gathering, oftentimes with Hostway here, as well as our friend Sam. And I've lost so many times to these guys. And usually my motivation to continue playing was, I'm gonna beat these guys. I'm gonna figure out what combinations of cards I need to use. I'm gonna figure out how they play. I'm gonna learn how to beat these guys so that I can win. I may have lost this time, but the war ain't over. Um, and so that's a very different motivation from what Saul had. But then, of course, game of Magic the Gathering is nothing in comparison to what was going on in Saul's life, but different situation totally. But yeah, we all have a different perspective or different emotional reaction when we realize that we've lost or failed at something. And usually, I mean, if it's a hard loss, if it's a hard failure, like I said, I mean, relationships or um, relationships can definitely be a big one. So whether maybe a conversation didn't go well, or if a talk didn't go well, or you really didn't see well eye to eye with a friend on something, what have you. Those can be tough moments. And oftentimes it's easy, if there's what feels like a big failure, or something that just went really wrong in our lives. It's very easy to just sort of I just want to find my safe place. I want to go and crawl into a little hole and just sort of be by myself, maybe pretend like that situation didn't happen, pretend like I didn't experience that failure for a little while, just try to escape, just try to get away from uh, that failure, or from that bad experience. Um, what do you think it takes for us to sort of either keep or to regain that motivation to keep on moving forward? Sarah, you kind of mentioned it just now. Just, well, I'm going to try better. I'm going to make the changes I need to, and I'm going to get up and try again. What does it take for us when we have that defeat or that failure in our lives?
I think another one is even just thinking about the fact that most of the time, failure leads to refinement in some way. Um, I guess, for example, if you had never lost to Samuel Sway, maybe your game would have never improved. And I mean, there's, I think, countless, I guess, applications of that. But I think failure always involves some sort of refinement. If you never lose a basketball game, you never need to practice, right? So, like, yeah,
Unless you're just so good that you never ever fail.
yeah.
I think a very typical scenario is when I was doing the job hunting, because I applied for many positions, and I submitted a lot of resumes, and then lots of them get rejected. But I have to like refine my resume time and time after again. And even though I get the chance into the interview, I fail lots of interview with face to face. Either they will think I'm not experienced enough, or my coding is not solid enough. So, but during all those interview failures, I also get improved, and I know how can I express to let them better understand me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of repeating what Sarah said earlier, just hope again, and just the belief that this isn't like the final straw, that this isn't the end, that okay, yeah, I may have failed this time, or lost this time. This isn't the only time. This isn't it. And I can persist and try and hopefully see victory.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what other choice do we have, right? Just give up, be hopeless, be faithless. And I mean, there are definitely times in which, okay, we just got to walk away for a little bit. That's not necessarily a failure. It's just, okay, I'm going to take a step back from this. Maybe this isn't the right direction to go in. Being able to have hope and being able to move forward doesn't mean just moving blindly forward, doing the exact same thing that has been done for a while. But yeah, moving forward definitely does mean progress. It means hope. It means being able to hang on to something there. Because yeah, I mean, if we just give up and surrender, then uh, that's definitely faithless. It's hopeless. It's not really godly. It's not really believing in God's power to be able to change us, to be able to change our situation. It's a huge part of it. Failure stinks.
Yeah, yes, it does.
I'm not a fan, man.
Yeah, I like how you put that about like kind of giving up doesn't how you said it, I think you said it's not godly, or you said something, but I think that's a really good point, and that's something that I kind of need to hold on to. That I guess giving into that mindset or that perspective does show like a lot of lack of faith, and it almost basically like disrespects who God is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys got to see it, but a few weeks ago, me and Ty did one of the daily encouragement videos, and it was pretty sure it was First Kings 19 is what we focused on, but also First Kings 17 and 18 was mentioned. But it's all about Elijah, what he was doing, and I mean, you just get to read about Elijah being super faithful in First Kings 17 and 18. Resurrecting the widow's son, bringing about a miracle for a widow and her household, calling down fire on his sacrifice, and essentially beating the prophets, the 400 some prophets of Baal in a contest of faith and whose God is bigger. But then very, very shortly after that, despite all those incredible things that just happened, Elijah was terrified because of Jezebel and because of Jezebel wanting to kill him. And so he was just in a panic was absolutely terrified for multiple weeks. I think even close to a month worth of time. But God continued to take care of him while he was experiencing that, while he was in the middle of having a complete breakdown. Um, God was still very, very much taking care of them, and then ultimately was able to comfort him and convince him both of his goodness and of his provision, and to be able to rely on God and to still have faith, to still keep on moving forward despite all the mess that was going on around him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Story always did amuse me, in part because of that very weird thing of he saw so many great things happen and then was absolutely terrified and ran off. And it's like, wait, how did you lose sight so quickly? But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I can be a little too critical of the Israelites and of the prophets and be like, wait, I lose sight like super quickly. Like it doesn't even take me a day sometimes. It's just, oh, it was an hour and this challenge arose and I've lost all composure and there is no God. Like it's just amazing how quickly we can fall apart. So sometimes we I mean, I guess my point is sometimes we look at the Israelites and think, wow, they lost faith so quickly. And then when I look at myself, sometimes I'm like, wow, they stayed faithful on a consistent basis so much longer than I do.
Yeah.
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 I mean, sometimes it's hard just to maintain that faithfulness, maintain that motivation when we feel like things aren't going our way, right? It's usually how it goes. Is it sure is easy to stay motivated when everything is going exactly the way that we want it to, and then man, if things are just everything's going off, I'm not as eager or excited as I was before. I mean, it's just really easy to fall into that of things aren't going the way I want to. I just sort of want to retreat, or I want to give up, or be a recluse, just hide. I'm in trouble, I gotta hide. Yeah, it's very tempting, very tempting to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think failure itself is not very scary, but after we get the first time of failure, we keep trying and we keep get failure. That is really scary and frustrated us, and people really easy to lose hope in this situation.
Yeah. Gotta hang on to hope. Gotta keep pushing forward. Yeah, I think one of the things that's definitely really really exciting and motivating for me, like I mentioned, is learning. And so oftentimes feel as though that I have something like a spiritual boost whenever I'm learning something new. And it's oftentimes the intellectual pursuit that sort of gets me excited and gets me doing more things. But it's so easy to confuse the intellectual side of things with the heart. The intellect is not the heart. And so, I mean, I could have as much of this committed to God and learning as I want, but if my heart's not really behind it, if I'm not really super interested in loving God and being able to just enjoy God's presence, then what is it really worth? Um, it's worth something, but I mean, it's I think being able to have a committed heart, a fully committed heart, and one that's just motivated by wanting to love God is going to be much more pleasing to God at the end of everything. It's sort of like what Paul says. He says, um, if I could, let me see here. What does he say in the letters?
What sacrifices his own salvation for?
No, it's about the value of knowing 10,000 words in a tongue, that he would rather like know basically no words in a different language, but to be able to explain that that Christ was crucified. Basically, he's sort of separating the differences between knowledge and the understanding of the heart, and the understanding and the commitment that comes from knowing about Christ's death and resurrection, knowing the difference and the power between those two things. That knowledge is never even going to be second best when it comes to that relationship with God. But yeah, it's definitely easy, I think, for me and probably for plenty of other people, to end up putting knowledge first instead of to put the heart first, because God ultimately cares way more about the heart than a lot of this.
Yeah.
This is good, but this is better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think our heart will lead us to more action than our head.
Yeah, you got that right. I've had this this phrase that I've been using. I don't remember when I came up with it. I hope I came up with it. I hope I didn't hear it somewhere else. I'm pretty sure I didn't. But the phrase is, from the Bible. Oh yeah, zeal without knowledge is dangerous, right? I think is that a proverb?
I feel like that's a proverb.
Yeah, help me out, bro. But yeah, it's zeal without knowledge is dangerous, but I think knowledge without zeal is by far worse, because then you just have all these things that you know, but they're not being put into action. You're not living anything out. Yeah, you may know a lot of things, but it's just gonna rattle around inside your head and not get anything done. Like, okay, what's the use?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's everything that I wanted to share.
It looks like it's Proverbs 19:2.
Okay.
The NIV says, "Desire without knowledge is not good. How much more will hasty feet miss the way?" The Berean Study Bible says, "Even zeal is no good without knowledge, and he who hurries his footsteps misses the mark." So conceptually, the same idea.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. Thanks for looking that up, Josue. But yeah, that is everything that I wanted to share for tonight.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
we
sharing.
appreciate that.
Cool. That's our content tonight. See you, YouTubers.
Bye, you too.
Bye, YouTube. Forever.